Live at Urban Wild. Although I did wrap up, I am just waiting for the last cats to finish what they're doing. I did need to explain in precise details what this lawsuit that we keep talking about, what one specific lawsuit that we keep talking about, which is kind of the key to everything, is all about. So to make a long story short, and trying to not cry and not get choked up and trying to not be more biased than I already am, I'm going to explain the case. The case was an issue of a foster child, a boy who was in the foster child system in Israel. Now we found out the hard way that officially there's no adoption system in Israel, so everything is long-term foster, although it's not normally supposed to exist. It's supposed to be short-term foster. There is no version where fostering becomes adoption in Israel. That was the official story that we were told when this case had to get to where it got to. Okay, I see you, little bugger. Okay, stop attacking me. What I mean by that is, this is a case where a child was in foster care of one particular person who devoted her life to fostering this child that had no chance of survival at birth. That was the origin story of this particular child. The child was in critical condition besides other long-term issues that it had, even if it would survive developmental issues and otherwise, which is what put the child into the special needs system. And the child was not supposed to survive. A child like that in Israel, sadly, back then, the only place for a child like that to go was to a monastery, yes, a Christian monastery in the north of Israel, where they take care of these kind of children that disappear off the face of the earth, since nobody wants to deal with them, nobody wants to see them, nobody wants to know that they exist. It was one monastery, unfortunately a monastery, no Jewish facilities. Why? That's not the question, but that was the story back then. Based on that, without much consideration, although all the consideration that needs to be considered, which is compassion, forgiveness, hope, and trust, this child was fostered. And even though the expectation was that it wouldn't survive not X amount of weeks or months, the child survived and flourished for years. Moving right along, because of the fact that there was a technical glitch that this child was, although abandoned in the hospital by its biological parents, it was considered that it was voluntarily given over. That being the case, the child made Boker Tov. That being the case, the parents, the biological parents, maintained parental veto because there was no one else. The foster parents didn't count for some reason in this system. There was no point at which the foster parents with enough time were considered parents, since it was a voluntary fostering. So that is part of the basis of the story. So what happens is, in a case like that, for all the different reasons of the fostering and the special needs, there are, I don't want to say endless, I don't want to say countless, but there are an extreme amount of tests and appointments and other type of follow-ups that need to be done, medical and otherwise, and social, and then presented in the hospital and in different tribunals and whatever it's called, committees, to make sure that the child's best needs are being taken care of and what the child needs further. So this was a regular thing, once or twice a year at least. And part of that is also to verify and validate the readiness and the ability for the foster family to take care of the child's needs. That is the whole purpose. Ouch! This little vicious little bugger. Doesn't mean to be vicious, but I'm getting hurt here playing with these cats. Okay, that's it. So without filming that cat who's taking me apart slowly, we'll continue telling the story. This little one here. So, unfortunately, with a child with that many needs and surviving against all odds, what was required from the foster parents became more and more challenging, to the point where no one ever expected for this child's needs to be fulfilled. Nobody ever expected this child to be able to get from one milestone to the other, yet miraculously he did, which created new needs of services and new needs of requirements of what this child needs, especially since cases like his never existed, that a child with those issues would survive. Hence the evolution and the development of tools to help people that couldn't communicate and otherwise. So there were crossroads as this child reached age 13 and 14 and other milestones that shouldn't have even been logically. Okay, I see you, but you're hurting me. You're hurting me with your nails. So the child was never supposed to survive that long, and at a certain point, especially reaching age 13 and 14, which are significant in Jewish tradition, the needs or the requirements of what the biological parents, who hitherto were non-existent in the child's life at all of a sudden, for social reasons, for community reasons that shouldn't have even applied, since the child was not part of any of the family's community, but for theoretical issues that might be coming up in the future for the family, they decided that they need to brand him. They need to, not brand with an iron, but they need to get him to look more like the family. So when these things come up in the future, he looks more like the family. That started now becoming a conflict for what the child's needs were, because the parents' needs became the overriding factor over the child's needs. And somehow, when that was brought to court, the parents' needs were upheld over the child's needs, but due to a technicality, only due to technicality. And it's that technicality that we've been preparing our case against and for and with for the last 7 or 8 years, for one specific reason, is because that child who started off as a child of special needs and all those things is no longer considered a child in that regard, and although still a ward of the state in certain senses, because he has other certain special needs, but from the sense of his age is no longer special needs. So there's a change in status, whereas a child, he no longer is governed by his biological parents, but as a special need ward of the state, because of his other special needs of developmental. Now it's the state that has to completely take responsibility and answer for whether this child is getting what he needs or not. And of course, this child is now an adult, and his rights should be a little bit different, meaning where he was voiceless before, voiceless for many reasons. First of all, he does not communicate the way regular people communicate. He does not speak properly, or at least not in full communication. 8 years ago or 9 years ago, we helped introduce different tablet communication, which opened up his ability to communicate, and that's what scared so many people so much, which is when this thing fell apart. So we believe that he can communicate now. We believe he should have the right to communicate. We believe that his needs and wants should at least be listened to, if not heard, or at least heard if not listened to, whichever way that goes. We believe that given the opportunity and the chance, we can show that he should deserve the right to have more, and part of that more is be reconnected to his family, which are his foster parents and siblings that raised him for his whole entire life until he was cruelly taken away for systematic reasons. Sorry, for reasons to protect the system. I shouldn't say for systematic reasons. For asystematic reasons to protect the system. And here's this little bugger who's gouged me already. Wants more. And there's Dingo. So the point of the case is, we believe that this child who's now an adult, even though special needs, should be afforded the ability to speak and communicate, should be afforded to get what he wants and needs if it doesn't contravene or contradict anything else, We believe that a major part of that will be reconnection to the family the only family that he knew and loved, and the only family that knows and loves him, which was his foster family. That is the core of all this, but it boils down to basic fundamental human rights. Boker Tov, that everyone should have, that we claim to try to be giving to everyone, and yet we seem to be systematically taking away from more and more people as time passes. This is an international human rights violation, starting with one person. That one person whose rights were violated ended up violating the rights of everyone around him in his life, in their lives, and the cascade effect, the butterfly effect of the amount of people that were hurt in this unfair ruling that made no sense. It's time to fix that and correct that. And yes, it will eventually become a class action lawsuit. So I needed to make that abundantly clear, because those who know, but those who don't know. This is something that will be and should be and has to be the key to redefining what rights are for people, redefining what special needs are, and who defines those and who provides those, and redefining when a person gets to actually have a voice or not. So in all of those, hopefully soon to be happy notes, I'm making this abundantly clear what this is. I'm making this abundantly clear that we didn't forget, we're not leaving it, we're not putting it down, because the idea of never forgetting and the idea of this nation and this state was built out of Boker Tov, built out of and here to the response to the Holocaust. We're sadly perpetuating the crimes of the Holocaust even in this state. And I'm not saying as an Israeli state, as a Jewish state, as an apartheid state. No. I'm saying first and foremost as a Jewish state against all of the Jews, as a Jewish state against the rest of the tribes, and as a mismanaged state, because the expectations are wrong from the outside, not because from the inside. We're not able to be who we are or act who we are, which means that we're causing a tremendous amount of PTSD, residual PTSD, that continues to spread throughout the world only because we can't define which lives matter here, which is really sad. So I needed to get that message out, because this is the most important message of the day, and it's about time that it's out loud and clear. So this is the definition of our lawsuit, for anyone who wants to know.